We're for Crisis in America. I got to reconnect the destination. Crisis in America. We are excited to have a great panel. We'll be with you in just 1 minute. Give us 1 minute, please. 1 minute, please, and we'll be getting started. Crisis in America. How should the church respond? We'll be joining you in just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Have a great panel today. You're going to really enjoy this panel. I think America is wondering, what saith the church? What does the Lord say through the church? And so we're about to have this conversation. We'll be with you in about 30 seconds. In about 30 seconds, we'll be with you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We'll be with you in just about 20 seconds. About 20 seconds. We had a great talk this past what was it, Friday night, and we're going to continue this dialogue. We'll be with you in about 15 seconds. 15 seconds. Bam. There we are. All right. We're excited about today. We're just going to go ahead and get it going here. So joining us this evening, we have a wonderful panel of brilliant leaders from Carolina, per se. We're expecting some other guests to join us shortly. But we're going to get started right now with this panel. We are asking the question, Crisis in America, how should the church respond? And we're enthused about today. I mean, it's going to be I think it's going to be a heavy conversation. I don't know. I'm not putting pressure on anybody. We're just going to have a conversation. Let's go around and introduce people here. We have Pastor Justin Bolden. Justin Bolden. He is out of, I think you just said, what's your hometown, Justin? Pittman?
No. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Now
he's from Charlotte, North Carolina. Now we'll claim Charlotte, but his church is Reconciled Church. It's a new church plant in the great city of Charlotte. We have my dear friend Robert O'Neill. He's Pastor Robert O'Neill. Robert A. O'Neill. He is pastor of Shepherd's Way Christian Church in Zebulon. I hope I said it right, North Carolina. And he has been pastoring. He's been pastoring for about 6 years there. And then we have my dear friend here, Mitchell Blue, Pastor Mitchell Blue. He's the founder and church planter and pastor. He co-pastors with his wife of Uncommon Church here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we're going to have an outstanding dialogue. We have a couple other gentlemen joining us shortly. But let's go ahead and, I should tell you who I am. I'm Pastor Barry of the ELC, the Empowered Living Church. We are a new church coming to the great city of Charlotte, North Carolina this fall. We're really excited about what God is doing. He's doing an amazing work here in this city. And so we're anticipating an awesome time today. I want to invite everyone to watch and share this broadcast today. It's going to be an amazing conversation. So let's get started. Let's get started with, matter of fact, before I ask any questions, gentlemen, let's go ahead and tell us a little about you, Justin, and then we'll go to Justin and Robert and then Mitchell. You and your church.
Yeah. So my name's Justin Bolden, like you said. Been married to my wife, Brandy, for 21 years. We got 4 kids, 1 grandkid, so I'm a granddad. So hashtag granddad life.
Okay.
Moved to Charlotte 3 years ago from Houston, Texas, to church plant. And name of our church plant that we started here is Reconciled Church. And we're just working towards launching that and just trying to be a presence here in our community over here in East Charlotte. So, yeah.
Awesome. I want to invite you, gentlemen, and everybody watching to start a watch party or to share this now. You can go to any of our Facebook pages, Barrett Berry or Pastor Barrett Berry on Facebook. We're joined with Pastor Roosevelt Moss, and so we're going to go around the room. Next, we have Pastor Robert O'Neill, and then Pastor Mitchell Blue, and then Pastor Roosevelt Moss, and then the Reverend Extraordinaire Mark Thompson, Matzamela. So we'll go with Robert. Tell us a little bit about you, brother. What's your work you're doing here?
I am a pastor at Shepherd's Way Christian Church in Zebulon, North Carolina, church plant. Started 6 years ago. I'm also work full time at a hospital here in this area. And been married for just celebrated 16 years on Friday.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. That's awesome. That's awesome. Mitchell Blue, tell us about you and your work.
Hey, again, Pastor Mitchell Blue. I see half of us got pastor titles and half of us don't. So I guess we'll leave it that way. But yeah, Pastor Mitchell Blue. I have the honor and the privilege of being a co-vocational pastor, and I do say it that way. Consider myself co-vocational. I work as a lead pastor, founder, establishmentarian of Uncommon Church here in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. We are a church plant, roughly 3 years old, and still plowing and engaging here in the city. I do still work for full time as well. I work for Microsoft as a relationship manager. So mission field at work and mission field all day, every day doing ministry, man. So grateful for the opportunity, and welcome to the conversation tonight.
Awesome. Now we have Pastor Roosevelt Moss. Tell us about you and your work, kind sir. We don't hear you. Let's get him off. Let me take care of him.
Let's see. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, Pastor
Okay.
Moss from the Metro Church of Christ right here in Charlotte. And we're a church plant, man. We started back in 2012. So we're almost 8 years old now. We'll be celebrating
All right.
8 years in September. And so just working and grinding for the Lord in the city. And just enjoying what I'm doing. Glad to be a part of this conversation.
Awesome. And now we have my dear friend here. He's my big brother. He's he's done so many things. But right now, we're introducing Pastor Mark Thompson. Oh, excuse me, Mark Thompson. I like to call him Matzamela. He's the host of Make It Plain podcast. He's the MC and organizing committee member of the Million Man March. I had the pleasure of serving on the National Organizing Committee for the Youth for that march in 1995. And he's been the MC of every anniversary of the March on Washington every year. You will recognize he's a regular face and voice in the movement. He's chaired the D.C. NAACP Police Task Force, which he authored the D.C. Civilian Complaint Review legislation, establishing the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And we talk about that, that's relevant right now because we deal with the discussions around police brutality. This Civilian Police Review Board is a key component that many cities need to have. But I'm going to get out of his way. Mark, tell us about your work and a little bit about you, kind sir.
Well, thank you. God bless all the brothers who are here. Good to see everyone. That's past tense. I chair the police task force, and we got that legislation through. But we kind of developed a template, I think, for how local communities can deal with police, because police, after all, are governed locally. There's no national oversight or standard. Just like that's the two things that in common that are critical to our people. The boards of elections are governed locally, and police are governed locally. Yes. And so people need, I think, and I think that's where, some of you who are pastoring, I'm not pastoring, but those of you who are, the local church can play a significant role in local struggle. Montgomery, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. It wasn't, I'm Dr. King and I'm just going to start a national movement on Twitter. Okay, it started out as local struggle. Yes. And it builds from there. Yes. I don't think we would be where we were if everybody was always just looking for Dr. King and people like that, even Malcolm. he built local temples. And, one of the social media is good, but, as I've always said, and people who've heard me say it probably are sick of me saying it, but it has created a false sense of organization. So if I get 10,000 likes, that's an accomplishment. No. If you get 10,000 people to join an organization and do some work, that's an accomplishment. Retweet, like, shares, that's not scientifically tangible other than being able to show I got this many likes and shares. But who is organizing on the ground in Minneapolis and in Louisville to do something about the police department? We did it in DC. We were very successful at it. But people have got to decide that's what they want to do and not do the 30,000 feet in the air approach. Even all the demonstrations that are taking place right now. Beautiful. But at the end of the day, people in those local areas must struggle within the local political structure to change the police department. Now, unless Congress is going to pass some federal bill to take over all the local police departments, which I doubt, that's really what we're going to have to do. So some cities have done it and have done well at it. Others just haven't even taken it up. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I am. And there are other things that I think we have to consider in this current situation, in this current struggle. And I'll talk about those a little bit later.
Very good. So today's talk is a way to get it started, get some energy going. I want to start off with this question right here. What is the crisis in America? Articulate that. I was on Facebook today in one of those discussions where people are not, I guess, we're not physically organizing. We're just having these discussions. And some people don't even recognize that there's still a crisis or have come along the same understanding of what the crisis is in America. So in your own words, what's the crisis in America, if there is one? Let's go with, who wants to go first?
Why not?
Go ahead, Mitch. Yes, sir.
So when someone poses that question, what is the crisis in America? I'm always the first to say I think we have to choose one, because there are multiple crises that exist in this country, but I think all of the crises that exist stem from one major root. I'll say it that way, and that root deals with systemic racism. So that, to me, that's where it is. But from that root, there are many different things that have actually spawned as far as crises in our country. Whether we're talking about a crisis of inequality, where we're talking about the crisis that we suffer in, take the city of Charlotte, for example, one of the wealthiest cities in the country when it comes to being the second largest banking capital in the U.S., but still major issues with poverty, affordable housing, and things like that in our city. A large percentage of people that struggle to make a livable wage in our city. So there are tons of different crises, I think, that we can look at from America, and it's every single city, I think, is a microcosm of the entire thing that's happening across the country. So I think that there are many different crises you can look at, but I think all of them kind of spawn from that root of systemic racism, oppression, and just a desire for the powers that be to remain in power and not share power, wealth, and education.
Okay, very good. Who's next? Let's keep it going. I'm going to go with Roosevelt.
All right, there we go. I'm unmuted now. I would echo what my brother was saying. I think the greater question is not, is there a crisis in America? The question is, when has there not been a crisis in America? African Americans, people of color, we've been in crisis for a long time. The challenge that people, I believe some people have in recognizing that there's a crisis is we're so good at making what we go through look small. We're so good at masking our struggles. We're so good at dealing with the cards that we're dealt and making lemonade out of lemons that sometimes we can make a real deal crisis look like just another day in life. And so Are we in a crisis? For sure, we're in a crisis, but the crisis didn't start with COVID-19. The pandemic didn't start with COVID-19. It didn't start with George Floyd, but it's something that people of color have been struggling with, ever since we came onto this land. I would say this, echoing what my brother was saying. I find it amazing to me, as much as wealth and prosperity that's in a city like Charlotte, and Charlotte's not the only one. Just the dichotomy that exists between such wealth and such disparity at the same time. How can a city be so prosperous with banking and technology and other industries? How can one side of the tracks be booming so much, and just 2 blocks down, people are struggling, and the people who lived in those houses can barely afford to live inside the city limits now? And so, are we in a crisis? We're definitely in a crisis, and I think that part of the challenge that we have is, sometimes I think people of color, I think we're so used to it that we in some instances become numb, and we can kind of get focused on trying to resolve the crises that's in our own life. But I think in order for us to take a step forward, even when we quote unquote some of us make it out, we have to understand that the crisis, if any of us are in crisis, then there's a huge possibility that all of us are in crisis, and that's the only way. That's the only approach I believe that we can take as a community to really begin to deal with these crises. And as long as we stay separate and stay segregated, and as long as we only come together when somebody dies, which leads to another question: why did it take such a horrific event to cause so much attention to the plight of people of color and Black people? And so, those are just a couple of observations. The question: are we in crisis? We are definitely in crisis.
Okay, all right. Who wants to take it? Justin, what do you think? Are we in crisis? And what is the crisis if we are?
Yeah, I appreciate what my brothers have already shared. To me, I think when we talk about the crisis, the question I'm asking myself is like, will we capitalize on this moment? I think for me, it seems just an observation. There's this incredible groundswell of people who are coming to the table saying, personally, myself, I've had so many conversations with many who are like, had, quote unquote, had the scales fall from their eyes, right? Like they're kind of seeing it for the first time. And there's this, you look across, I saw the map, every state in the United States have had, protests. I'm from a small town in the middle of central North Carolina, and they had an incredible protest just yesterday, where a number of people showed up and protested. It was really powerful. Actually, I saw videos of where people had went in front of the courthouse there in Pittsburgh, North Carolina, and laid on the ground with their hands behind their back for 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence. And you're talking about, maybe 100 and some people of all races, cultures, and so I wonder, are we going to be able to capitalize on this? Because this is great that we've got this momentum, and there seems to be a shift in the culture of not only acknowledging, but like we have to do something now. And so, but it's going to take some mobilizing and some organizing to make sure we see the stuff that needs to happen from this go forward, whether policies and reforms. And honestly, I'm going to come back to it always, like, my crisis, my question is like, is the church going to finally stand up and be bold and lead this conversation against this?
Well, that's where we're going. That's where we're going. But I think I want to first identify what the crisis is. Yeah. And so I want people want to know and have the transparent conversation of, I think Roosevelt mentioned systematic racism is taking place as well as Mitchell Blue. But there's something that needs to be articulated so people can understand that it's not a bad situation. It's not a difficult situation. It's not something it's going to fade away. America's in crisis. Mm-hmm. Mark, talk about that. What's the crisis?
The crisis is, well, there's several actually.
Yes, yes.
There's the crisis of lynching in America. There's the crisis of a pandemic, and there's the crisis of a loss of democracy in the form of we have really this autocracy in place with Trump, and it is highly likely that either he's going to cancel the election or he's going to, if he loses, he's not going to leave office, or he's going to cheat to win. And then we're really in a bad place. And so all of those things together, America is coming apart at the seams. And we've seen this before historically in history, where voter suppression coincided with lynchings. We saw that after we lost the right to vote, after gaining it after the Civil War, and then lost it again. So, everything in America right now is wrong. From the handling of the pandemic to Trump manipulating and tinkering with the electoral system and the justice system with all of these pardons and whatnot. So, and then obviously there's the lynching. Yes. So those are what the crises are. And I think that if we're going to address it and the church is going to address it, we've got to come up with a way to do it, pardon me, sooner than later. The other thing I'll say is the church is threatened existentially by this pandemic. As a matter of fact, the struggle about or around keeping churches open, keeping people tithing. But, I've heard of some situation and some people we mutually know, Osahar, who said their giving has actually increased now that they've gone virtual.
Yes.
The church could potentially never be the same again, which is not a bad thing. I had one pastor say to me, it's almost as if people want to give more because they found a space and a place to worship at home and not spend money. Now, there's no substitute for being together in the Holy Temple. But I think that things are going to change to the point where that may happen less and less. Is that okay? Can we live with that? Or should we try to change that? I don't know. But at the end of the day, the other crisis is the church is going to have to take up more of the mantle of social justice. Most preachers weren't with Dr. King. We're going to have to change that as preachers today. And, even educate some of our congregants who may not want to see. Some preachers can't do certain things because congregation won't let them either. I mean, it's not just preacher, it's the congregation. We don't want to be involved in that. But we need, as black preachers in particular, and white ally preachers who are woke and conscious, we need to be preaching a prophetic gospel. Because this is the same as what was going on in early 1900s when it comes to lynching. There is no difference, be it an armed vigilante, be it the police. And we have to stop, when another brother used the term numb, I don't even think people are numb to it as well. I think the minimalization that anybody would make in this situation and the minimalization that any church or congregation or preacher would make is really a sin. And it's not going to save us. So I would say that is the crisis. I'm probably talking a little bit longer than you wanted me to, but Corona, the cops, armed vigilantes, where the church fits in this new normal, those are the crises, and probably too many for us to address on this conversation tonight. I mean, this is going to have to be a long conversation
to go into it, to all of it.
I mean,
you probably a couple things here, a lot, but I think, and I want people to get ready for this. We're gonna talk about where the church is going. You mentioned like how the church has changed and how some people have indicated that giving has gone up, and how we may not, the new normal is going to be different because we've had this infusion of online church for so long, and now people are outside again. I'm contemplating doing a tent revival because it's about time to go back to old school again. But Trump, now people have been talking about who's going to be his vice presidential candidate and the like, but I think some concerns should also be about who, about the three things you said. I don't see Trump saying that if I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna walk away. He's already articulated that he want to stay in office. He's already tried to ignite the military to get involved in the street protest, and so I think we're moving into a new era where the future of politics as we know it is changing. But before we go there, what's the church going to do going into the fall and the summer? I think, Mark, you mentioned that it's different now. What do you guys see is different now?
Well, I think it's a lot of it's going to look different. Excuse me, I sound like maybe somebody was going to jump in. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I think it's going to be significantly different moving forward. And what I mean by that, I think that the moment that it's safe for people to go back to church, I think there's going to be a bit of a surge in the sense of wanting to connect, wanting to touch, and wanting to do all of that. But I think once that subsides, I think that everything that we're doing now is in some way, shape, or form is going to continue. I do think church sizes, they were already trending downwardly anyway. I think this moved that up probably about 10 years or so. And so I think the gone are the days of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 seat sanctuary, 2,500 seat sanctuaries. The numbers are going to be much smaller, but and I think that the task is going to be can I discipleship, and is it possible to disciple virtually? I'm a firm believer. Call me old school, call me what you want, but I'm a firm believer that fellowship is one of the core principles of the church, and that not just a virtual fellowship. I think that's good, but I don't think that that's what was intended. What the author's intent in the New Testament when they talked about how they fellowship. The Bible says that they broke bread from house to house. And I'm fine with house to house church in the sense that we see it, we know it today. But I think that there's going to be a challenge in trying to convince people and help people to see the need to still gather in person and not to take the and I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but not to take the lazy approach to where your Christianity has become so easy and so comfortable and so what's the term I'm looking for? Custom designed for you, where you can kind of get it like Burger King, you can have it your way. I think there's going to be a bit of a tug and war on that. I think there's going to be a challenge in trying to help people to see that there is a standard that God wants to call us to. But the beauty of it, though, is that we do have that standard. And the beauty of it is that God, who is our creator, knows what's best for us. And so there's always a place that we can come back to. But I do think that the church is going to look a little bit different. I do think that some of the things that we have traditionally done that maybe are not necessarily based in biblical principle, we're going to have to figure out a way to let go of and embrace some new things. But I think at the core foundation of the church, I don't think we're going to move as far away from the scriptural examples of what church looked like. I think it may look a little different, but I think the core principles and the core values of the church, we're going to have to fight.
You'll stay the same? Okay, now what I'm trying to get to is now that we're worshiping, but what Mark mentioned, and it's true, that the organizing of the communities happen within the church. As we go into the summer and the fall, and we're in this new online era, what does that do for the movement of the church as we go into we know we're going to do church differently, but what's going to be with boots on the ground or organizing or social justice movements and the protests that we're seeing right now? How do we address that in this new way of doing church? Or can it be talked about? Go ahead.
just from my opinion, I think as we move towards the summertime, people want to gather, but they're going to be cautious. As I poll our people, they are cautious, wanting to know what kind of precautions we take. So that will be slow moving. Secondly, is the communication. Our people, well, my people, they're watching the news and they're trying to stay
Mm-hmm.
abreast. And one of the things that I want to do is continue to give them the right information, what's happening, and then of course related to scripture in my preaching, and be on calls like this and inform myself and to find out what is the most practical way that we can be engaged in conversation, even though we're not able to meet face to face like we want to, because this pandemic, from my congregation's context, they're not
Mm-hmm.
eager to come back together without it being without some more answers, vaccine, whatever that may be. So it's going to be slow, and but one of the practical things I think would be best as we move forward
Mm-hmm.
is getting our people prepared to engage in voting, being registered to vote, um, getting them the information they need, the links, the information who's up on the ballot locally, and those kinds of things. So there's
Mm-hmm.
still a lot of groundwork that can be done.
Well, I have some friends right now. They're having a Georgia voting conversation. Reverend Zena Pierre, Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant, businessman Charles Walker Jr. They're having these conversations right now about the voting taking place in Tuesday in Georgia. So voting is relevant. But again, we're not in the same way that we were when we were gathering into churches. So what does that mean going into the fall, the summer and the fall? Mitch, what do you think?
So I definitely think that communication is going to be key.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, if it does nothing else, creates a medium by which we can communicate um, more broadly and definitely more efficiently. I still
Mm-hmm.
sometimes struggle with the effectiveness of communicating via social media, but I think the medium is just as good as people engage in. So I think that's really the drive, and that's really the issue. We've developed a church of convenience, and it's like I think at some points we've made it so convenient that we've made people. Um, we've actually allowed people to become lukewarm by the level of convenience that we've actually created with church. In my opinion, may not be a popular opinion, but it's my opinion. But yeah, so it's definitely going to be different. I think we continue to leverage the technology to communicate in ways that we can, but there's nothing that beats uh, being able to rally people and being able to gather people. Yes, gathering is going to be slow, but our ability to have people engage in continuing the momentum of rallies, continuing the momentum of events that rally around the issues and rally around the causes, and don't allow us to lose focus of the real issues. The things that happen are travesty that definitely need to be addressed, but they have to be addressed in systematic ways. We have to attack the 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 stalwarts, those things that
Mm-hmm.
have and the pillars that have actually been established in this country. We have to go after the pillars. We can't just go after parts of the snake. We have to go after the head of the snake, yeah, in my opinion, and get to the root of the matter. Because if we don't, certain things have to be rooted out. And if we don't root them out, then there is the potential that thing grows back. Like Justin, I'm from the country, and we grew up in situations where if you were farming and you had to get weeds out, the best way to get them out is to root them out. Because if not, there's the potential that they come back and still choke the crop. And keep that thing from growing that you worked so hard to sow seeds around to grow.
Well, it's interesting you saying this. I'm going to go to Justin with this question with you next, Justin. But I've heard the governor of North Carolina say, and it was, I've never thought I would hear a senior elected official in America say this. he listed a number of things that there are the crises or the problems in America, and he outlined them to be race is one, and racism is one, and he also mentioned white supremacy as being a problem here in America, and that took me back because. I have 2 undergrad degrees. One is in Black Studies, Africana Studies, and other one's in political science. And I thought in college that I would never hear a white person ever say anything about white supremacy being a problem. But as a result of that, now we have this civil unrest that's happening in our communities. And is the civil unrest, is it justifiable?
That's to me, right, Barry?
Yes, to you, Justin.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, so I think as I think about that question, I'm like, who justifiable by who? You know what I mean? I think.
Do you think it's justifiable?
Yeah, I mean, I completely do. I mean, when you think about the historical narrative of our country, the systemic racism that has been instituted from the founding fathers to now, to me, it seems only logical that that's where we end up when finally, you hit that breaking point when people are, can't take no more. And honestly, civil unrest is actually part of the birth story of this nation to begin with. When you think about the Boston Tea Party, I mean, this was, justifiable by at least every teacher I had teaching history growing up, right? Like this was necessary, after this unjust and oppressive rule by the king and the monarchy in England. Like it was our God ordained right to revolt and to spark the American Revolution, and yet somehow here we are, 400 and so years later, and now we're the ones that are kind of being really confronted with that reality in this day and age, right? Like when the people are oppressed, it's absolutely not surprising to me when there becomes unrest. And I think that's, I think to me, especially when you see the wide, broad spectrum of people who are joining in this moment, it tells me that something's resonating on a deeper level across the country. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say yes.
Okay. Mark Thompson.
So this is on the question of civil unrest?
Yes, sir.
So, well, first of all, those who are committing civil unrest are the police. When the police kill us, they are unrested and rioting. The term riot, again, we go back to the earlier days of lynching, there were police riots. And that's what we're experiencing right now. So that's where the unrest is. Everyone else is in a mode of self-defense and righteous demonstration in consistency with their First Amendment. Now, clearly there have been some agents provocateur in this current situation of demonstrations. We know what they're up to, because around the world people are demonstrating nonviolently, but only here are there agents provocateur. And those are people who are trying to muddy up the movement and the demonstrators to benefit Donald Trump. With those that are engaged in violence, those that are engaged in creating food deserts in Black communities. They have one grocery store, so you burn down the one grocery store. But you don't burn down DA Mike Freeman's house. You demonstrate in front of his house and leave, and then go to the place where Black people buy groceries and burn that down. And that's why, this Corona is a blessing, because it's kept me here. Because if I had been in Minneapolis and had witnessed that, we would have had a problem.
Yeah, right.
So, and I'm not saying, burn down the DA's house to kill him. You knock on the door politely and say, you and your family need to go to your mother-in-law's because we about to burn it down. If you're going to burn down the Target, You see, and have my people, they can't get their prescriptions no more, can't get no groceries no more. But we just gonna raise a fist at Mike Freeman's house. So there's that. Black people have to be nonviolent in this situation, not only because of our obviously our Christian principles, but for those of us who aren't Christian, the reality is we aren't armed enough to take on the police. And the police are already killing us. As far as our white allies are concerned, it's going to be time for our white allies to put their bodies in between the police and us, because the police won't kill them as readily, if at all. So, all of that to me, all of those things to me are justifiable strategies in this situation, and our allies need to continue to do that, stand right in between the police and us so we don't get killed. I mean, that's, a man mentioned the Boston Tea Party. Well, in a revolution, there's going to be some danger, there's going to be some peril. And people need to, be clear that that's what's happening. And it's only going to get worse if we don't address the situation. There's going to be more civil unrest, and it will continue to be justifiable. But what's even more justifiable, again, is organizing. Dr. King never had a demonstration without an organizational plan or attached to some strategy, attached to some policy, even. And so people need to be educated about policy and all of that. And I think it's the duty of the church. And my brother Mitchell was talking about the church making it convenient for people. I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that, but to me, the church making things convenient is when the church is not empowering people and preaching a prophetic gospel that gets people organized to better their conditions. Feel good sermons, prosperity stuff. We don't have any use for that anymore. And the history of the black church, the slave church, the backwoods church, the church down by the river or by the moat, was the word and the scripture in secret code to plot our escape and our freedom, and when necessary, to take out the master and Miss Ann. We've got to go back to the old landmark, so to speak. And the church must become, once and for all, and for the foreseeable future, that refuge and remnant that leads to our liberation.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I had this question. I thought I had this question already prepared, but where's the prophetic voice of the church, and where is it? Do we as individual pastors have a responsibility to be the prophetic voice in the darkness to bring forth light, or is it coming from somewhere else?
No, I think very much so. We do have that responsibility to be the prophetic voice, and if you're, as a pastor and as a leader, if you're not being that prophetic voice to your people, I believe that you're failing them. Anytime that we see great movement within the church, anytime we see, even going back to the Bible, Moses was the prophetic voice to the people of Israel. He was their great deliverer. That really was the one that was able to speak truth to power, to be able to speak the language of the powers that be in that moment, to invoke change, being led, of course, by God, as to what that they would do. But I think that's what Moses was. And I think too, we've kind of danced around it, and we've kind of said it in pieces and in parts, but no one's really said it outright. But I think if we boil everything down to what we've seen, dealing with Trump, dealing with the church as a whole, what America is suffering from is a leadership crisis, period. There is a lack of leadership, or a lack of good leadership in every place, whether it's in government, whether it's in the church. I think for too long, we've had too many of our church leaders that have gotten in bed with with politics, gotten in bed with government, got checks from government, and now they can't speak against government for risk of losing their nonprofit status or risk of losing their funding for the programs that they're running from their churches. And because of that, we got pastors and leaders that won't speak truth to power, or their voices are filtered. I'll say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, that's an issue. If you don't have the liberty and the freedom, as my brother Mark said, that there's some churches where pastors don't have the liberty and freedom to say what they want to say because they're boards really that govern their churches, and they're basically puppets and frontmen. But if we don't have that liberty, that freedom, and just the audacity to stand up and speak truth, as pastors and as leaders, and to be the voices that we need to be in not only in our pulpits but in our communities as well, then we do both our pulpits, the people that we serve, and our communities a disservice.
Anybody else want to tackle that? That was a good response, Mitch. Anybody else want to tackle that? Where's the prophetic voice? Are we the prophetic voice, or where do we think it should come from?
I think we all have a responsibility. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, brother. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, we all have a responsibility to speak the word of God, to speak up for justice, and to speak up as leaders in our congregations and our churches. And I cannot tell you where the rest of the voices are. I could just say what I'm charged to do, and of course, is to glean and learn and read, and then try to move our people towards seeing that scripturally and practically, living that out. So, are we looking for another Moses? I don't know. Are there Moseses that are to come on the scene now? It's very possible. It's very possible this is more than just one person, and the way we're seeing that being demonstrated all over the world, that's where we're moving. So I think it's important that to those of us who have a platform, who have people in front of us, who have some level of influence, we are to speak justice from our understanding.
All right, Justin, you jump in on that question for prophetic voice. Where is it? Who's supposed to bring it?
Yeah, I mean, so this has been something I've been talking about for a while now. The fact that the church has lost its prophetic voice because we've kind of outsourced it, if you will.
Break that down.
Yeah, so I mean, I think so. I'm going to speak specifically from the white evangelical side because that's where I'm coming from. I mean, we've traded our prophetic voice in for a hope of political and legislative power. And so we've aligned ourselves so closely in those areas that as soon as we are faced with a crisis like this, that's going to cause us to have to stand up and be opposite of the power brokers in hand, we shrink back, right? Because we're trying to keep our seat at the quote unquote table. And so I think for me, that's what's been so disheartening for the church, because specifically when we're talking about this topic of systemic injustice and racism, I mean, we actually are the carriers of the message of the only one who has the power and authority to bring about the change we're hoping to see. And so when we shrink back from proclaiming that, I mean, I know dear brothers who lead churches who are talking to me and wanting to know how they can begin to speak and lead their people well in this area. And I have to tell them, like, realistically, like, you wade into this water, you could lose your job. You could lose your livelihood as a pastor, because as soon as you bring this up in your church, it's going to be instant pushback, division. People are going to leave the church. People will call for your removal because you're being divisive and all these things. And this is just the reality of the present state we're in the white evangelical church. And so, the prophetic voice, we have this opportunity in this moment. I feel like God's teed it up for us, where if we'll walk boldly into that calling that He's given us as His body, we can, I believe, regain it here in this country. But that is, to me, the question: are we going to accept that calling and be, at the end of the day, say I'm going to be obedient to God before I am pleasing any man.
And you said something heavy, man. You said people may lose their jobs, and that is that's reality. That's real. That's real. And I'm taken aback by it because you said it, and I listened to all the conversations that I've been having with my white brothers, and well, for instance, one, it's hard to get them on this online conversation. You know, half of the people I ask to get on will have a reason why they can't get on, and I appreciate you, Justin, for stepping up and being part of the conversation. But if we can't have the conversations in the churches, from the pulpits in the churches of America, where does that really leave us as far as leadership? So I asked the question, what's the next steps for America and its leaders to address the issues of injustice? What I'm almost hearing that the power of the pulpit is being removed because of the crisis itself. So what are the next steps? What do we do?
I'll jump in first. Oh, man, I think I appreciate what my brother said earlier. Man, we've got to get back to this prophetic gospel, right? The gospel for so many has been turned into this individualistic salvation moment, right? This the way I described it growing up in that environment was like getting your golden ticket into heaven, right? Like that was what the gospel was. Like it was about making sure you go to heaven when you die. But the reality is the gospel not only, reconciles us back to God, it now causes us to live our lives in a way where we seek out this reconciliation between us as brothers and sisters. I was listening to a powerful sermon from Charlie Dates from last weekend. I don't know if anybody's heard it, but he said we've removed one of the beams from the cross. That the only one we focused on is the vertical beam. And so that's where all the attention gets placed, is on that reconciliation between you and God. And it's almost this preach the gospel, and as the gospel saves people, then that'll solve all the issues. But the crazy thing is nobody uses that rationale talking about the crisis of abortion in this country. Nobody uses that that kind of rationale when they're talking. Like if somebody comes to you as a pastor and their marriage is in crisis, right? They're like, Pastor, we're going to get a divorce. You don't say, well, y'all just need some Jesus and y'all going to be good, right? No, you're going to tell them, like, not only do you need Jesus, but you're going to have to get some marriage counseling. You have to do some things to fix that. And yet when it comes to this idea of systemic injustice and racism, the fallback so often is, well, just preach the gospel and that'll take care of it. And so I think when you talk about next steps, man, honestly, one, I think the most important one for us as the churches, leaders in the churches, man, we've got to recapture this holistic view of the gospel and how it affects every area of our life. And to me personally, it's like the command is, now that I have been saved and rescued by Jesus Christ, now my job is to, as I have this moment here on this earth, to point people to what is coming. Right, to demonstrate what it looks like to live in the kingdom of God, that when all things will be restored. And so now we're tasked to living out of this gospel that we claim is so dear to our hearts, now causes us to have to live outwardly in such a way that people see it demonstrated. And so I think, to me, that's one of the most important next steps for us as leaders.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I also think one of the things, several things that have been happening as of late is one of the things that can move us forward is acknowledging it. I've had a lot of my white brothers, pastors, who called me to speak about what has happened and to say, man, we love you, we love your congregation, your people. We know this is a hard time. It's acknowledging that there is some racism and those kinds of things that still exist. And then the next movement is, hey, how can we address it? Talk to us, and someone said to me, well, we shouldn't have to explain it to them. And I say, well, I'm glad to at least be at the table so we can have a conversation with each other. We've developed a relationship now where we can have a candid conversation as to, this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like, this is what we see, etc. And it just starts a conversation, and then I would, for the church itself, I think the church, in my opinion, you know, we allow ourselves to be moved to the either or positions instead of the both ands. Like in the scriptures, you know, the right, well, let's say the right says abortion is the most biblical issue we should deal with, and the left says it's social justice, etc. And I'm contending in saying they're both biblical issues that we should be standing on, fighting for, and not allow either side to push us into those corners. And I think if we all can speak up to those issues of social injustice and uh, you know, rights to live for the unborn and for the born. You know, we saw that with George Floyd, where his right was taken away. And so I think by acknowledging it, having those conversations, and living biblically according to the scriptures, I think we can. That's the first simple step.
Okay. Do you think the former police officers in Minneapolis will get convicted? Now, we've had Sister Breonna Taylor, her birthday was Friday, and there still isn't much movement there. We're still waiting for some movement to happen in that case. The two gentlemen, say it loosely, in Georgia were arrested. But do you think America, you know, I just read a statistic today that there's been about, in 2019, 49 police officers were killed in line of duty. But over 1,000 black men were killed. People were killed by law officers in 2019. But then 99% of the police officers have not been convicted in the last 10 years. 99% have not been convicted in the last 10 years. So do we think for any instance that the officers will be convicted in Minneapolis? And then
No.
the follow-up question is no. And then my next question is, if they're not convicted, what's going to happen?
Well, one of the things that can happen on the federal level is changing the law, which lets a lot of officers off based upon intent to violate or be racist. And that's always a very difficult threshold to prove. You almost have to, you know, catch someone on the record saying, hey, I'm going to go do something racist to somebody today. And nobody does that. Nobody says that prior. And that's been the problem with a lot of these convictions. It is pretty much legal in America, if you are a police officer, to kill an African American. If you are a police officer in America, and if you are especially a white police officer, and you kill an African American, it's all good. That dude had his knee on George Floyd's neck and stared directly into the camera that was filming him because he knew he could get away with it. And I think that there are going to be more incidents like this. I no longer think these incidents are random. They're so, it's its own pandemic within the culture of policing. You know, so we have a pandemic and a police-demic. But I think that these types of incidents now are more coordinated to cause despair and destruction. Voter suppression, again, in the late 1800s, and lynching were together. It all happened together. So it was to strike fear and intimidation into the public. And so what all this is doing is striking fear and intimidation into the public when it comes to our lives and our safety. So no, I don't think they'll be convicted. Now, what are we going to do? I don't know. See, the other reason we won't be convicted, because like I said, you know, we people have negotiated with these prosecutors.
Yes.
And they negotiate with the prosecutor and, like I said, burn down the target rather than burn down the prosecutor's house. So there's no pressure to do anything. If the vote is suppressed, and one way it's suppressed is by people thinking there's only one thing to vote for, and that's president. Voting for mayor, city council, county commissioners, the people who hire and fire police chiefs. is as important. But now the Republicans don't want there to be voting by mail, which is going to be necessary in a pandemic, police-demic, vigilante-demic, whatever it is. And without that, no voting or a lack of voting down ballot leaves people in office to continue to make decisions that prevent officers from being convicted. DA Mike Freeman said at the press conference, there's some other mitigating circumstance. No, there aren't. There's nothing else. What is he talking about? But they're already making the case for there to be some type of getting off the hook. The other officers should whistleblow. They should tell what they know or what they were informed of for lighter sentences, frankly. Cops always turn other people against each other, and the prosecutors, if they were real prosecutors, would do the same thing with those police officers, with those dirty cops. But no, I don't think that convictions are forthcoming. And I think we don't need to get people's hopes up about that in this particular case. I just don't think it's realistic.
Someone else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, and if I'm 100% honest, I think I felt more confident when the charge was third-degree murder that they would be convicted versus with the charge of second-degree murder. And I know that that's hard to hear, but the reality is, I feel like when the charges were initially actually put out there, that the initial charge was one that they could potentially get a conviction on. When you move it to second-degree murder, there's so many other things that the state now has the burden of proof to prove in this particular case. And then two, I think if they would have moved the primary police officer's case to second degree, but then gave the others third degree, then there may have been a more likely chance that they would have been convicted. But giving them that whole second degree as well, it's going to be extremely hard for them to get a conviction. And to be honest with you, I think they trumped the charges up so that they could have those extra loopholes and ways to get out. I really do.
What's going to happen then? When if the convictions don't happen, if they don't come to pass, what's going to happen?
My hope is that people continue to protest, people continue to riot, but then they move beyond protesting and rioting to voting and being educated about their vote. I think Brother Mark made a very, very, very serious point when he talked about the local elections and the fact that we have to continue to educate our people on voting down the ballot, and then going even beyond the commissioners as well, but studying the records of the judges that we vote for. The Supreme Court judges in our state as well, and looking at where their rulings have been in times past. Have they been complicit as it pertains to certain issues in times past, and looking at rooting those out as well. But that whole voting and local government is extremely important. There are tons of things that we would love to see happen in Mecklenburg County, but it won't happen until we begin to look at who our county commissioners are, and we begin to hold them accountable to doing the things that they said they were going to do, not just during the election cycle, but once they actually get in the office. Because everybody wants to come to our church during the election cycle and talk to our people and give us all of the good and wonderful things that they've done as far as their track record and all the things that they're going to do if you continue to put them back in office. But then we've got to hold them accountable once they're back in office, or hold them accountable to say, you didn't do what you said last time. So no, you don't have our vote. No, you don't have our commitment, our allegiance, or any of that, simply because we see clearly the only thing that you are aligned to is keeping the seat that you have, the seat of power that you have, and not really wielding that power to effectively govern for the people.
Okay. Now, Justin, what do you think? What's going to happen
if they don't get convicted? Right, that's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. My personal feeling is if they do not get convicted, you will see maybe even greater outpouring of frustration and demands and calls for policies and reforms to be put in place. I agree with Mitchell. I did feel more confident in the beginning with the third degree charge. That felt like something it felt like when they released that charge, it felt like this was a prosecutor who was relatively sure after looking at all of it that they could get that conviction, right?
Right.
That second degree, that does worry me. And honestly, I know I talk about this a lot, but it's just hard not to be jaded in moments like this. You know, like we've seen this play out too much, and you want to get your hopes up that justice will be served and the right thing will happen, and then so often that's not the case. And so, yeah, I mean, when just in this moment that you see the way everything is now, if they're like all, you know, set free, yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see an even greater and more intense uprising, if you will.
So back to the church. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
So on this third versus second degree, I just want to remind everyone, the person who put third degree out there was Mike Freeman, who has never gotten a police officer convicted. So his approach cannot be trusted. You know, anybody else you might say, well, maybe they thought they had a better chance when they knew what they were doing. Nothing Mike Freeman does has worked. He said in the press conference there was some other mitigating factors that might show that they're not guilty. He said that. So we can't operate on nothing he said is valid. Now that Keith Ellison is in and he's saying second degree, that gives, to me, that's more credible coming from him. That doesn't mean they're still going to get convicted. But Mike Freeman cannot be trusted in terms of bringing charges. Now, what's the difference? I'm asking a question.
Yes.
What's the difference between second and third degree murder?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So I think if I understand it correctly, the difference, one of the differences between second and third degree is intent. So it's still not first degree to a premeditation standpoint, but third degree is really more accidental death than it is second degree, if I'm not mistaken.
And we know,
so I could be,
but we know that this was not accidental.
To us it is, but the policeman's argument was, of course, I had my knee on his neck as a restraint, but it was never really my intention to kill him. It was my intent to continue to restrain him and keep him from resisting. So,
but he was already in the car. They put him in the squad car, did they not?
Did they pull him back out? Is that what happened?
It's my understanding he was in the car. They took him out of the car. Now, once you put somebody in the back of that car and they're handcuffed,
that's supposed to be it.
Well, and we can raise all the hell we want to. Yeah. Now I remember back in the day when PCP was a thing, and folks on PCP could chew through the handcuffs, but don't nobody do that no more. So if you put somebody in the back and handcuff them in behind them, they can kick, but you still have control. You in the car, you pick them up, you take them to the station. When you take that person out the car, when you've already secured them in that vehicle and put your knee on their neck, you intend to kill them.
Yeah. And my whole thing is George Floyd was not a small man. So we know how much room was in the back of a police car.
Yeah. I'm looking at the video now while we're talking because I'm trying to go back through the timeline. You're right, he's not a small man. Yeah. How they got him in the car. Yeah. Now, not that big. I get in the car. I ain't gonna take him back out the car.
I'm not taking him back out.
If I get that big son of a gun in there, Yeah.
Wow. Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at this now because it looks like
I don't think I ever saw a video where he was physically in the car, and that's just me personally. Though I may have missed it, but I don't know if I physically saw one that he was in the car. But
well, Let's. Why don't we look at this together? Oh, so I can share my. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you can share a screen right now.
Okay, so hold. Let me just do this right now. We're gonna do a little CSI up in this piece, if y'all don't mind.
This
Hold on.
quote came from. This comment came from our guest from the last conversation. She's a criminal justice professor, Dr. Janice, and she said Freeman never wanted officers to go to jail. Second degree means a reckless regard for life and knowing your actions would cause death, just
Right.
not premeditated.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me see if I can. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm gonna try to share the screen that I have,
You should be able to.
and we're gonna watch this video. Okay, I don't know.
If you can, let me find it.
Yeah, no, it won't let me. Oh no, here we go. Here we go. I got it. It's a little
All
tricky. I'm used to doing Zoom. Can y'all see that?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay, what happened? It says I'm sharing it. Hold it.
Let me see.
It says I'm
here we
sharing
go.
StreamYard.
Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
There we go.
Here we go.
Okay, so now he's already out of his vehicle up there in the right. So he got him over here on the sidewalk. See that?
Right.
And he's not resisted there.
Correct.
So let's watch what happens.
Can you guys see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we can see it.
Do I need to make it full screen?
No, you good.
I'll make it full screen. Tell me if that's better. Is that better?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. Yep.
Okay, it's even better. Watch this now. Let's see. So he's on the ground. They writing him a ticket. This is the video from the Chinese jump, Dream Walk.
Yeah.
The Chinese carry out.
So at that point, they're not even writing him a ticket. They're just running his information.
That's heavy.
All right, he's getting up. Going towards the vehicle. Or no. Okay, they're taking him across the street. Going towards the vehicle. Or no. Okay, they're taking him across the street. Going towards the vehicle. All right, so that's all. That's all that is. So you saw him from a distance getting in that car, right?
Yep.
I don't know why we got echo. All right, so that's all. That's all that is. So you saw him from a distance getting in that car, right?
Yep.
You know why we have echo?
I'm gonna get rid of it.
Okay, is that better? So did you all see when he was going across the street in the upper left-hand corner, he was getting in another vehicle, in the vehicle across the street. Did everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm still trying to understand. I need to. That didn't show everything, but I'm curious as to, because if they had him in the vehicle, what's the point in taking him out of the vehicle?
Right.
And so I think that's the thing we have to be, you know, figure out in this second and third degree thing.
It appears that their hands are. It appears it's going to be a challenge. At the same time, it really boils down to who tries the case, possibly, and the makeup of the jury at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at the American history, if 99% of police officers have not been convicted, then we're already dealing with a stacked deck. So, and then I go back to this. I mean, protests can continue. I mean, maybe it can. I don't know. We had, the bus boycott lasted for over a year. Is it possible that we can maintain this movement, or the people can maintain a movement of protest without some sense of direction? Now, I remember in 96, 95, we had the Million Man March. And right shortly after that, we had the Black Political Convention in, I guess, East St. Louis. And then we had the election in November of 96. And there was a political agenda attached to the movement. Now, it was led by the faith community. Where are we now? I know there's a march in August, but where are we now with that? What's the church going to do?
So I think we have a responsibility as a church. Echoes back as well here. So I think we have a responsibility as a church, again, to continue to educate our people. I don't think that marches are sustainable beyond a period of time. I think right now, because of COVID, people have additional time, and it's convenient for people to march to a certain degree. Even some of our allies being accessible and available to do that, I think is aided by some of the stuff that's going on with COVID. But I think as we go forward, it goes beyond the march, it goes beyond the protest, and even goes beyond voting. And it goes to us talking about, if they don't hear us in our day-to-day speech, if they don't hear us at the voting box, the one place that they will hear us is if we can devise some type of economic strategy to pool our dollars, to pool our resources, and to challenge our people to get back to where we were many years ago, to get back to the years where there was the Black Wall Street, to get back to where the African-American dollar flipped over in its community as it does in other communities, in the Asian community, in the Hispanic community, in the Jewish community. Where are we from that economic empowerment standpoint? And I know everybody is harping on the fact that, well, there's so much disparity, there's so much of a gap, income gap between us and others, and all of that. And I get that, not denying the fact that there are income gaps that exist. But I think we begin to close that income gap if we reinvest in our community, if we reinvest in our businesses, if we reinvest in Black restaurants versus going to Ruth Chris, go down to Lola, or let's go down to some other Black restaurant that provides us with good food, healthy stuff that still allow us to nourish our bodies. But our money is turning over in our own community, and of course we don't really have a whole lot of Black banks. But if you are banking, if you can bank Black. And I mean, it challenges us because, again, if you have larger national banks, I used to work for the banks, so I know it's easy. But if this is what it means, if people respect my dollar, I don't mind spending money with them. I don't mind doing business with them. And maybe that's the way that we get to the point where they hear us. If you don't respect me, you don't respect my dollar. So you haven't earned the right to get my dollar.
Hey, Os.
Yes.
I'm still on CSI time. Continue the conversation, but can I share my screen again? I mean, continue with your line of questions.
You got something? Go ahead.
I want to kind of watch this too, because we've got some more video.
Well, Dr. Jen said this. We didn't think about the fact that we didn't in our conversation that the two gentlemen, they worked together. Chauvin and Floyd, they had worked together at a nightclub, and so they knew each other. So
Right.
I think
And I'm gonna address that.
she says she believes Ellison is trying to show that they had previous disputes.
You got me? I'm sharing. You got me?
I don't see it. You guys see it?
Not yet. It's not up yet.
Not yet. So I think the belief is that Ellison is attempting to show they had previous disputes and why the Chauvin, the officer, was so cavalier in how he.
Do you have to
fielded.
press something to share it like before? Because it's showing down below me, and it looks like it's in the green room.
I don't see it this time. Oh, there it is. Here we go.
Okay, you got it. So look, I need to back this up a little bit because I started at a different place. Let me just back up just a little bit. So again, this is where we picked up before, where we lost before. See the car across the street.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that's so they putting him in the squad car.
So it looked like they opened the front door, not the back door.
Well, it looked like they opened both doors. This is Chauvin and Tao.
He has 6 complaints.
Oh yeah.
Involved in the struggle to get Floyd into the car. Security camera footage from Cup Foods shows Koenig struggling with Floyd in the back seat while Tao watches. Chauvin pulls him through the back seat and onto the street. We don't know why. Floyd is now lying on the pavement, face down. That's when 2 witnesses begin filming, almost simultaneously. The footage from the first witness shows us that all 4 officers are now gathered around Floyd. It's the first moment when we can clearly see that Floyd is face down on the ground, with 3 officers applying pressure to his neck, torso, and legs. At 8:20 p.m., we hear Floyd's voice for the first time.
Please.
The video stops when Lane appears to tell the person filming to walk away. The officers radio a code 2, a call for non-emergency medical assistance, reporting an injury to Floyd's mouth. In the background, we can hear Floyd struggling. The call is quickly upgraded to a code 3, a call for emergency medical assistance. By now, another bystander, 17-year-old Darnella Frazier, is filming from a different angle. Her footage shows that despite calls for medical help, Chauvin keeps Floyd pinned down for another 7 minutes. We can't see whether Koenig and Lane are still applying pressure.
What do you want? I can breathe. Please, the knee in my dick. I can breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole time, man. Just get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
In the 2 videos, Floyd can be heard telling officers that he can't breathe at least 16 times in less than 5 minutes.
I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe.
But Chauvin never takes his knee off of Floyd, even as his eyes close and he appears to go unconscious.
Look at him.
Bro.
Get off of him now. What is wrong with y'all? What the? He got made. He got made.
According to medical and policing experts, these 4 police officers are committing a series of actions that violate policies and in this case turn fatal. They've kept Floyd lying face down, applying pressure for at least 5 minutes. This combined action is likely compressing his chest.
Let's close that out.
Okay, so
that was that's a whole lot, man.
Well, no, it is. But here's the thing, and this gets back into those degrees. He was in the vehicle. He said they pulled him out of the vehicle and don't know why. That's 2nd-degree murder. And then to keep it down like that, you know he's in danger. You're calling 911, and yet you're still keeping your knee on the man to kill him. That's at least 2nd degree.
Yeah,
now,
I agree.
Somebody said they knew each other, right?
Yes, they did. They worked at a nightclub together.
To me, that has nothing to do with it.
Huh?
I don't care about previous incidents. We're talking about the here and present.
Oh no.
That establishes premeditated.
But watch this though. You're right, premeditated, and or he worked in a nightclub with Chauvin, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the guy who shows up last to kill him.
Right.
What did George know about Chauvin from work that Chauvin had to kill him?
That's what we're saying. That's what I think. That's why I think it was a second degree, because of the previous relationship, and then as Dr. Janice said, them trying to find previous disputes that will connect them together, which then gives him a reason to kill him, and then that elevates it to premeditated, which then makes it a second degree murder.
Or Floyd is being arrested. Chauvin shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And they either have that history, or Floyd says, man, if you do this to me, I'm going to snitch on what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all that matters.
Yeah.
All that matters.
All that.
And you know, so anyway.
Well, that leads me back to, and we're going late into our conversation, but that leads me back to, where's the prophetic voice? I mean, I'm not convinced, based upon the history of the United States of America, that these officers will get convicted. And one part of convicting a police officer is you have to show that they violated the person's civil rights, because they do have a certain carte blanche to do what they want to do as police officers in their line of duty. We have to be prepared as a church to deal with the fact that people are seeing that video, one. Two, that there's protests within, there's agitators within the protests. And three, that we're not in our churches the way that we used to be. And so what does that mean for organizing, or what does that mean for ministry in general, or dealing with the people that have needs mentally, emotionally, physically, financially? I mean, we're really at a crossroad right now. And I think it's going to require us to be the leaders who take a stand like we've never had to do before as a church. Where do we go? What are some solutions?
Solutions in terms of what the church can do?
Yes. Where do we go? As a faith community in general, where do we go? Now,
well, and I mean, we need to preach the prophetic gospel. Mm-hmm. See, right now, people are upset about this. It would even be wise for the church to address this, because people, that's what's going to keep you got to keep folk interested in church even.
Yes.
And folk in church ain't talking about this and how to address this, and we just going back to some stuff that is irrelevant to right now. Right. Ain't nobody coming to our church no more. Yeah. If Mitchell, my brother Mitchell here, is talking about God in the context of where we are right now, and God is a God of the oppressed, and I'm over here talking about, you know, getting some money, some tithing, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Whose church people gonna go to? Right. You know, so I mean, it's just, that's what has to be done. And Justin, that goes for these white churches. Yeah. What's my man's name? I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now. Well, maybe I shouldn't say this. I'm not gonna call his name. but folks still want to run up in them TV prosperity churches in the midst of this, plus a pandemic.
At the same time.
Hold it. I'm gonna come back. Somebody else take it. I'm gonna show y'all something. Hold up. Let me show you real quick. I'm gonna post them up. I'm gonna show you something. I'm gonna get it right when I quote it.
You find it while you find it. I want to take the brothers into.
I'm gonna show y'all something.
We need to get some solutions going, man. So
I'm about to give it to you.
All right.
So, who said earlier we need to preach the word and stand the gospel and all that? Okay.
Maybe Roosevelt. I don't know.
Hold it. All right. I think I'm gonna go, if this will open for me, because I want to get it right.
You have a video?
No.
While he's finding that, you guys read this question.
I'm reading the King James version.
Okay.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood,
but against
See,
principalities.
here's our problem. We preach and people read the scripture, but they don't really listen to it and internalize it. Like, we say to our Father, the Lord's Prayer is habit, but we don't listen to the words. There's a line in there that says, deliver us from evil.
Yeah.
Which means evil exists.
Yes.
What is evil? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Spiritual wickedness, rulers of darkness. Let's put some respect on that name. Who is that? Who is the ruler of darkness today in this world and practicing spiritual wickedness in a high place? Who is that?
Well, some would probably say it's our president, Mr. Trump.
Why are we afraid to say that?
I don't think anybody's afraid to say it. I think we can scream it to the rooftops, but there's still a segment of our population that fails to believe that.
Right.
That he is kind of the not the progenitor of the spiritual wickedness, but definitely one that is continuing to perpetuate it and incite it, I think, to a certain degree. So yeah, I definitely think that. But I think even too, man, we can't just put it on the man itself. I think we have to deal with the spirit of the man and the heart of the man. Yes. And again, like you said, not the flesh and blood of Donald J. Trump, but the spirit that now influences the decision making, the lack of leadership, and the agenda of Donald J. Trump.
So, but then it says, when that is happening, wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand.
Right. Stand therefore,
having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation. And so all of these are metaphors for battle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Church has to do battle.
Yeah.
We have to figure out a way to do battle with the ruler. And see, he's one person, but he's representative of everybody around him. Justin, some of your brethren in the evangelical church who have made a deal with the devil to get lifetime court appointments. That's evil. And we have to call it out.
So what I'm hearing is there is a need for the prophetic voice to come from the pulpit.
I'm out of control.
No, you're all right. There's a need for the prophetic voice to come from the pulpit. And I think what someone said earlier is that it's going to be required of our white brethren, our white sisters, to get in between, to take a stand. Not just alongside of us, but maybe even in between the attacker and us. I think we're moving into a new era where this unity, I want to believe in this unity that I'm seeing. But Mark, like you said, we're actually in battle. This actually is a war. And so now that it's going to get a little bit more steamier, a little bit hotter, we'll be able to maintain this allegiance with those who finally have seen the light, who are now woke or conscious of what's taking place in America? Because Mr. Trump has a large contingency that still believes in him very strongly. What do we do? And I want you to think about that as your last thoughts here become, what do we do? I think people want to hear from you all. After we seen the video, I'm so emotional about the video right now, but where is it? Justin, help me out, man. I need help.
Man, we all need help. I appreciate so much what my brother Mark is saying. We hold true to the scriptures, right? We hold true to the word of God, that it is, as it says, sharper than any double-edged sword, right? It cuts through and gets to the heart of the issue. And it's funny as you're talking, the scripture that kept popping in my head is that says, "No greater love than this, than what? That he would lay down his life
for his friend."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're talking about specifically, as we're talking, the white evangelical church, which I think, I mean, this is the conversation. Just keeping it 100 with you guys and who's watching, right? Like, this is the conversation internally that goes on, right? I wasn't born 400 years ago. I wasn't, I didn't do this. Why am I responsible for this? And I saw a quote. I can't remember who said it. I wish I could remember who said it, but they said, just because I didn't cause a problem doesn't mean I'm not responsible for it.
Mm-hmm. And
I think we bear some responsibility that calls us, if we really want to be allies, if we really want to enter into this. Barry, you talked about unity, and we're called, right? Like Jesus prayed in the garden, right? That I pray that they would be one as you and I are one. But that means we're going to have to push past discomfort and painful situations and conversations if we really want to be unified, if we really want to enter into this battle and as gird ourselves up, right? Like for this battle, we can't do that from a distance. We're gonna have to enter in with our brothers and sisters, and that means we're gonna have to, first off, acknowledge. Like if we can't even acknowledge how we got here in this country, when that's still up for I mean, I still got people who want to tell me that the Civil War wasn't about slavery. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the nonsense that we're talking about. And when you have this, like, I 100% believe it's not flesh and blood we're warring against, because, the deceit and the lies that so many people willingly walk in, I think honestly, just to make themselves comfortable, right? Like, because it is uncomfortable to have to face a sin that goes 400 some odd years in the making that's never been addressed. We've never had a national reckoning on this, right? We've never really gotten into that hard conversation, because what we try to do, and I'm speaking for white people, what we try to do is deflect. And but look how far we've came, right? Like we'll say that constantly, and look all the progress has been made, and yet here we are, 2020, and we're right back to where we started. It reminds me of Ecclesiastes, right? There's nothing new under the sun. Like we just keep doing the same thing over and over. And I think until we really do the hard work of confronting and repenting of this great sin, and then once we do that, pleading with the Lord and empowered by the Holy Spirit, how do we move forward in this? To me, that it's got to be that, and we've got to. I know I'm all over the place here, but we've got to get away from this truncated, implicationless gospel that is so often preached in our churches. This idea that all you need to worry about is making sure you and Jesus are cool, and then ride this thing out. Right, so you get called on the glory or the rapture comes, depending on your eschatology. But anyways, but man, there's this like calling that God's given us, that now that I have reconciled you with myself, there's work to be done on this earth, because this is not the way I created this to be, right? This is not the original design. This is broken, and I've actually empowered you by my Holy Spirit to actually do the work, to start to, as the scripture says, start to subdue this earth again, right? Start to bring about this ministry of reconciliation I've given you. Start to do restorative things in your communities, so that people will start to get a glimpse of like what it is I actually intended for them to experience. And so, but man, that's such a monumental task that if we can't even get on the same page to begin with, I worry about what we're going to be able to do.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Robert.
Still muted, Robert.
You're new. There you go. Speak now.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Now we can. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely would not deduce anything to a one word answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, again, unity amongst ourselves as African Americans, as Black people, unity in our, for those of us who say we're of the Christian faith, there's got to be some unity as to what we say the gospel of peace is. Uh, preaching gospel to the poor. There must be some cohesiveness here, and I really think getting out of the political mindset and getting back to what's right, what's justice. Let God is a God of justice. It's all throughout the scriptures, and I think that's a strong position that I think would be powerful if we could do that. Stand in unity with ourselves, mobilize, unifying our millennials and our Xers, millennials, and those Z's. This is not just a movement. This is about us. Being liberated. This is about us being treating each other fairly and righteously, justice. So get unified there. Get unified as blacks. You know,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
we know we have this thing against us, so let's fight together. Let's work together to
Okay.
get this thing
Very
done.
good. Very good.
So,
Mitchell
Greg,
Blue.
yeah, man. So I think we go back. So Justin brought up something earlier that I wanted to go back and hit, because I
Okay.
think we just glanced over it, and it was the original piece about us looking at the cross both vertically and horizontally. We
Mm-hmm.
get that vertical relationship with God, right? But then we forget that horizontal relationship. Jesus said it this way. It's basically summed up in the two commandments, paraphrasing: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself, right? We know
Mm-hmm.
that. All the commandments are summed up in the two, right? So if we get the vertical piece right, love God with all our heart. Where we struggle is loving our neighbor like ourselves when our neighbor don't look like ourselves. That's the piece to me that is one of the greatest challenges and where we have to move to. And that is a heart issue. We try to make it about a whole lot of other stuff, but it is a heart issue. So until we deal with the hatred that is in our own hearts, the biases that are in our own hearts, the racism that is in our own hearts, until we allow God to deal with that and we can begin to love our brother as ourselves, even if they don't look like ourselves, we'll never get to the place that my brother Robert was talking about of unity. Why? Because we don't even love ourselves sometimes. So we got to get to the point where we love ourselves first and then love our brothers as well as we love ourselves. Thirdly, I think if we could ever get to the point where we get back to what Acts chapter 2 looked like,
Mm-hmm.
or what the book of Acts as a whole looked like, where we had all things common as the church. You know what I'm saying? It starts with the church. If we can get to the point where we have all things common, meaning that there's nothing that I have as another church, that if I see other churches in need, my other brothers in need, to partner for the sake of the gospel, that we're not partnering together to make that work actually happen. Doesn't matter if you don't look the same as me. Doesn't matter if we've got two different worship styles as a whole. How do we still partner for the sake of the kingdom to make sure that the kingdom advances and that we really fulfill what the scriptures actually say? So that's really our path forward. We have to get the vertical and the horizontal right, but we have to be honest with what we see in our own hearts, deal with that first and foremost, and then love our brother as ourselves. I know it within the circle that we move in, our connection with the SBC, loving your neighbor has been a big message, has been a big push, even a unified message series around loving your neighbor. But I think we were happy with that and it was comfortable as long as our neighbor looked like ourselves. But we have to challenge ourselves to say, I don't care what my neighbor looks like. The word requires me to love my brother, to love my neighbor as myself, and I have an obligation and responsibility to do so.
Very good. Reverend Mark Thompson, Maximella.
Well, that's important, love and loving our neighbor. But that's still a long time coming, and it hadn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to change our approach to that argument, and we need to do like Jennifer Holliday. She said, "You're going to love me. We have to make people love us. And you, and you, and you're going to love me." And we do that by the church engaging in conscientious struggle. the church becoming a center for justice and awareness and education and organization and mobilization for freedom. So, what happened during the anti-apartheid movement? Churches, think about it. Every church, we all remember this. So churches everywhere that had free South Africa signs in their yards. What happened? Why have we gotten away from the church being outspoken in matters like that? That's loving. It is loving a neighbor to stand up for one when one is being treated unjustly. And so I think the church needs to take that initiative. And frankly, I think that sooner rather than later, with all that we see happening around the world, see, it's tougher here in this country for us to love each other because we're so close together. And there's this history of racism. We look in other parts of the world, though, when people in other countries, they see things a little bit differently. And it's no thing for them. We got a pandemic. We're going to pay the salaries of the people who can't go to work. Just like that. Not even a debate. We're going to make sure everybody goes to vote and gets early voting and mail-in ballots. Not a debate. We're going to stand against lynching. Not a debate. But in this country, all those things up for debate because that is the culture of America, and America has still not grown from the Civil War. So we're going to need our international neighbors, our international friends. We're going to need them to love us, and we're going to need to love them back. In the way we loved our neighbors in South Africa. We stood up for them because they couldn't defend themselves. So we put sanctions on them, overrode a racist president to put those sanctions on. The churches put free South African signs. We divested from that evil apartheid state. We may have to bring the band back together and ask our international friends this time to divest from America. If this lynching doesn't stop, if Donald Trump won't leave office, we may need to say to our international friends, they say, what can we do? That's what you can do. Stop spending your dollars over here. Stop coming over here and touring America. Dry up the money. Well, Brother Mark, that's going to hurt the people you trying to help. Everybody's already lost everything in the pandemic. Most people have lost their jobs and won't get them back. So it can't get any worse. But we may have to appeal to that international community to help break the back of this racism and white supremacy that still continues to thrive in America. To me, that's love. And then those people who won't give in, once that happens, like Jennifer Holliday, they're going to love us.
All right. Well, this is my take on it, fellas. And I want to thank everybody for coming and joining us. We have Justin Bolden. He's the pastor of Reconciled Church here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have Pastor Robert O'Neill. He's the pastor of, I'm going to make sure I say it right, Shepherd's Way Christian Church in Zebulon, North Carolina. We have Pastor Mitchell Blue from Uncommon Church here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have Pastor, I'm going to call you Pastor, Reverend Mark Thompson Matsamella from New York City, originally from D.C. I think he's originally from D.C., but he's from Make It Plain, the podcast. He is, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but we'll mention it towards the end of the conversation. But I want to share this with you all. I think it's required of us from the pulpit to speak prophetically, yes, to the issues of the day, but also it's up to us to put forth an agenda that the people can grab hold of and give us some direction. I think what Mark said earlier was that every time King had a march and a movement, he had legislation attached to it. There was a purpose and an outcome premeditated in his movement. Right now, there doesn't appear to be openly, maybe someone's planning something in the quiet, an agenda because we lack leadership. But I think this is a great opportunity that each time the movement had an individual leader, that it is swelled to a large mass, they killed that individual leader. We have an opportunity now to work collectively across race, class, creed, and nationality, have a global movement, but it's required of us to speak power and truth to the enemy that's articulated in Ephesians, well, the one that Mark outlined, with the solutions that are articulated in Ephesians chapter 6. So I think we continue to have these conversations and these dialogues, but I think it's imperative, I believe it's imperative that an agenda comes out of here that is attached to some policy that will address the issues and needs of God's people here on earth. Without that, the protests will be in vain. Without that, the burning of buildings will be in vain. And without that, we'll see Mr. Trump or whomever take office will not have the issues or the relevance or the heart of the people as they go forth and lead. It's horrible to get a president the second time to go into office and you haven't for the second term, because in the second term they can do what they want to do. And if we don't put forth an agenda that holds their feet to the fire, if he is elected again, then we'll be out of luck. And if the other gentleman, Mr. Biden, gets elected, and we don't have an agenda that we can have him commit to going into it, we can be out of luck. So regardless of who's in the presidency, it's imperative of us to have something that we can hold them accountable to. That's my take on it. I'm glad you guys joined us today. There's something I want to share here. There's a march taking place, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do about this yet. I've been to many a march. It's the March on Washington. It's the anniversary of the March on Washington that Reverend Dr. King did. It's August 28th at 12 p.m. at Lincoln Memorial. Mark, are you emceeing this march by chance? Do you know yet?
No. Where'd you get that flyer?
I Googled it.
Interesting. Okay.
So, what do you think? Is this march something we need? What's the last thoughts today? Is this march what we need? Mark, I'll let you take the last thought on that. You've done all the marches in my adulthood, pretty much. So,
well, we had planned something even before the pandemic. We had discussed something, and then the pandemic hit. So, we're going to have some conversations and see. I'm going to be involved in some conversations and just see where we are. That's really all I can say about it right now.
Okay. All right, fellas. Want to thank you. We had the people on the line. Justin, how can people follow you? You and your work.
I'm on social media, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Handles at Pastor J Bolden, Bouldin is the last name, so you can follow me there. Also, for my people here in Charlotte, man, I would say go give It Ends Now CLT a follow. It Ends Now Charlotte.
Yes.
Excited to link up with these brothers and sisters who are passionate about the church being mobilized and to start to actively seek how we can fight injustice here in our city. So y'all go give them a follow as well.
All right, thank you. Robert O'Neill, how can we get in touch with you? How can people follow you?
Best way is on Facebook, Robert A. O'Neill III, and the website, my church website, www.swaycc.org.
All right, Mitchell Blue.
Yeah, man. So Mitchell with 1L, Blue like the color, on all socials. So you can find me there. Find our church, Uncommon Church CLT, which is the abbreviation for Charlotte as well. I echo Justin's comment as well. If you can, please go and like and connect with It Ends Now CLT. An incredible,
very good.
And doing some amazing work in the city.
Very good, very good. I don't want everybody to lose. We don't want everybody to lose before they get to Mark Thompson. Mark Thompson, how can they follow you?
On Twitter at Make It Plain, and on Twitter at Minister with 2 T's, Instagram Minister with 2 T's, Facebook Make It Plain, or Mark Thompson, also known as Matsamela Mafuma.
Awesome. And if you're watching now, then you know how to follow us here at Barrett Berry. I'm pastor in Power Living Church. These are the leaders of today taking us into tomorrow. Let's give them all a hand virtually. And matter of fact, let's somebody take us out in prayer. Pastor Mark, you're the visitor from out of town today. Why don't you take us out in prayer today, good brother?
All righty. I'd be happy to do so. Let me first of all thank you, brother Osahar, for having us here. If all minds are clear, God, we ask you once again to receive in the cradle of your arms those who have already passed from Corona and from the police violence, the armed vigilante violence. Please comfort and strengthen their loved ones with the assurance that the one you sent will bear their burdens and faithfully bring forth justice. Guide us to empty their tombs and resurrect those who have died by continuing our own freedom fighting to change the conditions which cause their deaths. Send the spirit of wisdom to teach us once again how to educate, organize, and mobilize and never stop. Help us not forget where we came from, what it took to get here, and the ongoing charge to keep we have. As we leave each other to go about our respective days, Lord, you are our refuge. Let the ancestors linger to guard our doors and render impassable our thresholds to virus and lynching. We are more than Corona. We are more than the cops because we are more than conquerors. Thank you for all of the esteemed clergy that have participated today. Thank you for our leader and moderator, Reverend Osahar Barrett Berry. Thank you for all who have viewed and listened and commented and had thoughts, shared thoughts about our conversation today. Guide all of our feet and order our steps. Now to you who are able to keep us from falling at all times, but especially now amidst this pestilence and the police, and who are able to stand healed from illness, grief, fear, in the presence of your glory with rejoicing. To you, our only God, our Savior, through Jesus Christ our Lord, be glory, majesty, power, and authority before all time, now, and forevermore. And the people of God said, Ashe and Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. That boy got some education right there. Hey, y'all. Be blessed. Thank you very much. Forward
Right.
ever.
Appreciate y'all. Yeah, thank y'all.
Ashe.
Reparations and divest from America.
Amen. Amen.